Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Jen and I moved from England to New Zealand in 2011. I moved from South Africa to England in 1999. So this video is about what to expect as a new immigrant. I've had two experiences as a new immigrant and it is overwhelming and stressful and so many things. Not everybody has experienced being a new immigrant, and if you are facing that coming up, I am going to use a bit of an analogy that more people have experienced so you can kind of have something to compare it to. So I feel like immigrating is sometimes like having your first baby. There may be a period of uncertainty beforehand where you don't know even if you are going to be able to or not. And then there's this period of anticipation and preparation. And just like towards the end of your pregnancy where you reach a point where you say, I don't even care how bad labor is, I just want to move on to the next stage and I want my baby in my arms. It can be the same when you're immigrating. I reached a point where I didn't care that I was facing a 25-hour flight and a massive upheaval. I just wanted to move on to the next stage and begin our new life in New Zealand and find our new normal. And then, like when you have a baby, those first few days are just chaotic and insane and exhausting and overwhelming, and you're in that newborn phase, and it can take a while to kind of settle in and figure out what you're doing and feel comfortable and find some confidence. It can be the same once you've immigrated and you're a new immigrant in a country that you have never lived in before. Maybe you've visited it, maybe you haven't. We hadn't visited either England or New Zealand before we moved there, and everything was brand new, but you're finding your feet and you don't know what you don't know. So this video hopefully will help you to know what to expect in those crazy new days. I do want to say that I'm only speaking from my own experience, and when I say what to expect, I just mean that it's helpful to have these expectations in place. They may or may not happen for you. It may not work out for you the way it worked out for me. But if you're expecting some of these things, then if they do happen to you, it's not going to be a shock. So the first thing is expect people to not really get or even really think about this massive thing that you have gone through. So I use the analogy of having a new baby. It's actually kind of like having a new baby and losing someone you love at the same time, because there is an element of loss and grief as well as what you're gaining in your new life. But having a baby, plenty of people understand. When you have a new baby, they know you're sleep deprived, they kind of understand what you've been through and what you're experiencing as a new parent. As a new immigrant, most people don't get it. They don't understand what you've experienced, what you're going through, and they probably just won't even be thinking about it because it's not on their radar. But for you, it's something massive. You've been through a huge upheaval. There's, as I said, some loss and some grief associated with it. Everything is overwhelming, and it just is a huge deal to have experienced. And this is one of the reasons that immigrants kind of find each other and can form friendships very easily, because they understand this massive thing that you've gone through. Expect shopping, especially your first grocery shop, to be completely overwhelming. Set aside a few hours for the first time you go grocery shopping, because you just don't know what is a good or bad brand. Some foods may be called different things. You may not be able to find certain foods that you are used to being able to find, and it's just, yeah, overwhelming. You may even want to break it up into a couple of trips. All kinds of shopping is overwhelming because you just don't know where to find things. You don't know what shops are called. Products may have a different name. Even if you know which shop to buy a certain product from, you may not know where to find one. And when you're in a shop and you're looking at a product, you don't know if that's a good price or not. If you see a particular tool on the shelf for $27, you don't know if you can get it for $18 at a different store, or if $27 is a bargain because it's normally $35. You just don't know what's normal and what things cost. I remember after we moved to England, I needed a pair of boots, and I went shopping and I found a pair of boots at Clark's and they were £65, and that sounded cheap to me, and I didn't know if that was a good price or not, so I bought them. And then later, looking back, I realized that was actually really expensive and I wouldn't normally spend that much on shoes, but I just had no clue when I first moved there. Expect to pay too much for some things and just write it off to school fees. Expect some jet lag depending on what your time difference is between your original country and wherever you're moving to. You may be experiencing some jet lag in those first few days or even weeks. The time difference between where I moved from in England to New Zealand was about 12 hours, and it took me almost 2 weeks to come right. The jet lag was a killer. I had kind of expected jet lag to feel like being tired and wanting to sleep at the wrong times, but I didn't realize how much it affected my whole entire body. I felt nauseous, I felt headachy, I felt just completely off, and obviously my digestive system was on the complete opposite end of the clock. So at 5 p.m. when it's dinner time, my body thinks it's 5 a.m. and it doesn't want to eat a meal. That can be quite a big thing. Obviously, if you have kids, they don't understand trying to get their body clock right, and you know, trying to sleep at night when it's dark and trying not to sleep in the day. And that can be really challenging, is kind of keeping your kids awake when they're wanting to sleep and trying to get everybody's body clock to the right times. I remember the kids having a nice hot bath at 3 in the morning because we were all awake and it was cold in the house, and that was something to do. So just like those first few days with a newborn, just expect to be exhausted and wiped out. It's just part of the process and it will pass. Expect to have to work for your new life. Just like when you're pregnant and having a baby, there's a lot that's talked about the birth and the pregnancy and all this kind of stuff. And then you have the baby and then you're sent home and you're like, now what? Nobody talks about the newborn phase or what to do next, or it's less talked about than birth. And it's the same with immigrating. In your mind, you can just be so focused on making this move and getting there, and then the rest is kind of a blur. You're like, we need to get our visas, we need to get our goods shipped, we need to get our plane tickets, and then there's the flight, and what do we pack, and then we get there, and then we'll settle. And it's just this vague, and then we get there. But once you get there, it's not over. Then you have to actually fight for your new life. You have to make an effort. You have to make friends. I do have a video on how to make friends that hopefully will be helpful. I will link it here and down below. You have to go and register at the doctor and at the library and all these kinds of things to set yourself up to live your life. Some of it you can let go and kind of do it later, but it will help you settle more easily and help things run more smoothly if you just get them done. So go and sort your driver's license out, get your IRD number, activate your bank account, all of these things. Yes, you're jet lagged and exhausted and overwhelmed, but push hard and just get these things done, because it will be easier for you in the long run if you just get them sorted. So expect to have to dig deep and push through when you maybe don't feel like it, or maybe feel like just going and sightseeing and enjoying your new country. There's going to be a lot of chores to get done to set up your new life. Expect immigrating to set you back financially. It is so expensive, and you are starting a brand new life from scratch. Maybe you've shipped all of your possessions over, maybe you're buying everything from scratch. Either way, it's gonna hit you in the wallet. Setting up a new life is not cheap. Immigrating is expensive, and it's gonna take a while to recover financially from that. Maybe that's not the case for everybody, but it was the case for us both times we immigrated. Expect a honeymoon period. So I talked about the jet lag and a lot of chores and things that are quite overwhelming, but at the same time it almost feels like you're on holiday. You're in a new place, it's so exciting, there's so much to explore and to find out about, and you just feel kind of filled up with all of the new experiences, maybe new foods, meeting new people, and it can take a while to kind of come down from the buzz of that. So maybe it'll be a while before you feel homesick, maybe you will never feel homesick, but expect to be in this little bubble of euphoria at first. It can be mixed up with feelings of grief and feelings of overwhelm, and that can be quite exhausting to have so many mixed feelings at once. But don't expect to kind of just arrive in your new country and start your new life and have it feel like your new life, because it won't for a while. And you may have this honeymoon period where everything is just new and exciting and it doesn't actually feel like real life yet. Expect allergies. I know this sounds bizarre, but it is actually quite common to develop food allergies or other allergies even a few years after you have immigrated. My cousin moved from South Africa to England, and a few years later she came up allergic to cinnamon for the first time in her life. Even seasonal allergies. I've always struggled with hay fever, but the first two spring summers when I was in England, I thought I was gonna die of hay fever because my body was encountering pollens and seeds and things that it had never had to deal with before, and it was bad. I was actually told by a doctor in New Zealand that after pregnancy and birth, immigrating takes the biggest toll on your body. And if you think about it, the food you eat, the water you drink, the air you're breathing, everything is completely different to what your body is used to, and it's a lot to adjust to, and it can affect you physically. You're also dealing with all of the stress of it and also the grief and loss that goes along with immigrating, and that can take a toll on your body as well. So be gentle with yourself, treat your body well, look after yourself, and expect some allergies. Don't be surprised if that does happen. Hopefully it won't happen for you, but it is normal if it does. My next tip is to expect to make another move. It can be so much a focus. I want to get to my new country and settle. That's your goal. You want to feel settled. But don't close yourself off to another move. Expect to make another move. Maybe you won't, but if your landlord, like ours did, decides to sell the house that you're renting 15 months after you've arrived in the country, you're going to have to make another move. And if you're expecting it, it won't be as much of a shock as it was to us. Also, you may find that you have gone to a certain area because that's where you could get a job, because you needed the job to get your visa, and after a while it may actually suit your family better to move to another area. Don't close yourself off from the opportunity to move to another area or from building the life that would suit you the best because you're stuck on settling in the first area you landed in. Just be open to another move, to find a better house, to find a better area, or in case you don't actually have a choice and you're forced to move. Expect that move, and then it won't be such a shock, and don't think it's going to get in the way of you settling, because you may actually settle better and more easily once you've moved the second time after arriving in your new country. Maybe you'll never move and you'll just stay in the first area you land in, and that's also fine. Expect to experience some sensory overload. The light is going to look different in the new country that you've moved to. The water will probably taste different, the air will smell different. Even foods that you're familiar with will probably taste slightly different. There's so much to see and experience, and you may be in a different season to the one that you've moved from. There's so many new foods to taste and try, and just expect to have a complete sensory overload, which can be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing. Expect your kids to be fine. This, I have found, is one of the top worries for people who are planning on moving to a new country. They worry that their kids are going to be okay, and 99% of the time the kids adjust way more easily and quickly than the parents do. Your kids are going to be fine. Don't worry about them so much. There's plenty of other things to worry about. So long as you are kind of there with them in their life, then they're going to be fine. Everything else can be new so long as you are there for them. 6 weeks after we arrived in New Zealand, my husband had to go away for almost 5 months, and that was really, really hard. It took a toll on all of us, but even so, my kids settled fine, and your kids probably will too. Don't worry so much about them. Expect that they'll be fine. They probably will be. Expect to be without your stuff for a while if you've shipped it. We shipped everything we owned from England to New Zealand, and it took 12 weeks for our container to arrive. So we sent everything about 6 weeks before we left England, and we were basically camping out, just waiting to go. We were sleeping on the floor with mattresses that we didn't plan to take with us. We were just borrowing bits and pieces of furniture, and then once we arrived in New Zealand, we borrowed things again until our goods arrived. You may be in temporary accommodation, you may want to rent somewhere furnished until your stuff arrives, or maybe you're planning on starting over and buying everything from scratch. You're not going to be able to do that overnight. So just expect to kind of camp out and to be without your stuff for a while. It's not fun, and it kind of is not helpful for when you're wanting to feel settled. It's a very unsettling feeling, just waiting for your stuff. But the day your container arrives, the day our container arrived was literally one of the best days of my life. The time will pass, just expect it to kind of suck for a while. And speaking of, just expect it to suck at times. The whole process of immigrating and being a new immigrant, same as when you have a new baby. Sometimes it sucks. At 4 in the morning when your baby won't stop crying and you don't know what to do, it sucks in that moment. And yes, you have parents saying they enjoy every moment. Nobody enjoys every moment. Sometimes it's just hard. And it's exactly the same when you're a new immigrant. It can be lonely at times and overwhelming, and sometimes it's just really hard. Stick it out. It doesn't mean you've made a mistake. It's part of the process, and it will get better. And on that note, expect the 2-year mark to make a big difference. Everyone talks about it takes 2 years to settle, and it's this kind of cliche, but that's because it's true. It really takes around 2 years to really, really feel settled. It was just after 2 years, in fact, that I found myself driving around and feeling this is my neighborhood and I belong, and realizing that I actually felt really settled. I will be making another video on ways that you can help yourself to feel settled as a new immigrant, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video. So I talked about the honeymoon period, and I'm going to use a different analogy now. Sometimes it feels like you've been standing on firm ground in your old country and now you've got on a boat and it's fun. It's enjoyable being on this boat and there's new things to see and it's great. And after a while you say, I actually just want a break now, I want to get off the boat. As a new immigrant, you can't get off the boat. You're going to be on that boat for a while, you're going to feel like you're not on firm ground, and sometimes you feel like you want to take a break, but you just can't. You can't take a break from being a new immigrant. This is your life now. But eventually, if you just stick it out, eventually you'll realize, I feel like I'm on firm ground again, and you're not on that boat anymore. Things don't feel so rocky and you don't feel like you want to take a break. So just hang in there, stick it out. You've probably worked hard for this experience and you've probably lost a lot and it's cost you a lot of money, and it will probably be worth it. Even if you decide that the new country you've moved to is not for you and you want to go back to where you first moved from, just the experience of it will be such a growing learning experience. It's still worth it. Remember your reasons for immigrating, remember your reasons for choosing your new country, and just enjoy it. It may not be enjoyable all of the time, but stick it out and it will be worth it. I hope this video has been helpful in sharing some of the things that you can expect as a new immigrant. Some of it may have sounded quite negative, and I hope you won't take that as a deterrent at all. I just want you to know what to expect and to not expect that everything's going to be sunshine and roses, because that's not how life works. But if you're expecting some of the things that are hard, then they are easier to deal with than if they come as a shock and you wonder, what on earth have I done? For us, both immigration experiences were 100% worth it. Even though we decided we didn't want to stay in England and made the move from there to New Zealand, I still don't regret moving to England. Immigrating is so exciting, and if you're in the position where you are facing that big move, then I wish you all the best luck. I have a playlist down below of videos that may be helpful to you. Do check that out. I also have a Facebook group called Moving to New Zealand, and that is where people who are obviously planning on moving to New Zealand can share each other's experiences and give advice to each other and support and possibly connect with each other online and then later meet up in real life. So do check that group out as well. I will link everything down below for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.